Hey Living Word kids, it's Miss Anna and we're here again for another week learning about how Jesus rose from the dead. We know that yesterday was Easter and we celebrated that he came. He loved us so much that he took our sins and died on the cross for us, but we know he didn't just stay on the cross and he didn't stay dead. He rose from the dead. And so I have a special guest here with me to talk about the resurrection of Jesus. Let's let her in. Her name is Pippa. Hi, Pippa.
Hello.
It is so great to have you here today. Why don't you introduce yourself to these kids?
Well, my name is Pippa. I'm come from the Imagination Station over the rainbow. It's kind of hot during the summer.
Yeah, it's kind of hot here too. Well, we are so glad that you are here with us today. And as we begin to talk about Jesus and what Jesus did for us, Pippa, I know that you love Jesus with your whole heart. And so let's tell them about how Jesus, he definitely has a real good story to tell.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. But there were so many things that happened before he even got to the cross. And so let's kind of review some of those things. And so we know that last Sunday was Palm Sunday, which we've talked about before in children's church. And that is where Jesus rode into town on a donkey and the people in the town laid palm branches on the ground. And so it really kind of represented like it was holy and Jesus really was holy. And so they laid it on the ground and that's how he came and entered town. And then we skip forward a little bit and we had the Last Supper, and that is where Jesus had his last meal with his disciples. And during that meal, he really talked about this bread and this wine and really told the disciples that the bread represented his body that he would sacrifice and that the wine represented his blood that he would shed. And really that's why we take communion. You guys know about communion, and that's why we take communion nowadays, is because it talks about his blood and his body. Then after the Last Supper, Jesus took his disciples to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. And there, one of his disciples that had betrayed him, Judas, had told the soldiers where Jesus was going. They came, they arrested him, they convicted him, and then they gave him his lashes, they gave him the crown of thorns, and then they put him on the cross, nailed nails through his hands and through his feet, and jabbed him in the side with a spear and crucified him on the cross. They took his body to the tomb. They wrapped his body in cloth and put him in a tomb and covered the tomb with a stone. And there is not where the story ends.
It's my favorite.
This is your favorite part.
Absolutely.
So let's go to the word. So we know that in Luke chapter 24, in verse 1 through 7, it says, "But very early on Sunday morning, the women went to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. So they went in, but they didn't find the body of the Lord Jesus.
They sure did.
As they stood there puzzled, two men suddenly appeared to them clothed in dazzling robes. The women were terrified and bowed with their faces to the ground. Then the men asked them, 'Why are you looking among the dead for someone who is living? He was alive. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Remember what he told you back in Galilee. The Son of Man must be betrayed into the hands of the sinful men and be crucified, that he would rise again on the third day.'" And so I've got a little experiment here to show you. So this is what these women, they thought they were going to the tomb to prepare Jesus's body with some spices. But they thought that when they got there, this is what they would see. They thought that there would still be a body in there. They thought there was still something in there. But what they really found is that Jesus wasn't there and the tomb was empty. And so that is the cool thing about the story of Jesus, is that even though he was crucified and that he died for us and for our sins, the cross wasn't the end of the story. because he went to the tomb, he rose again just for us, and he is alive, and we will get to meet him one day in heaven.
And I'm so excited for that day.
He is so excited to meet us, and so that's why we ask Jesus into our hearts so that we can go to heaven and live with him and God in heaven forever. How awesome is that? Isn't this a great story? I love that. They found the tomb empty.
Yes.
It is so awesome. Jesus is great. But thank you, kids, for joining us today. We are so glad to have Pippa here today, learning about her favorite character, and we know that she's asked him into her heart. And so, Pippa, why don't you tell these kids goodbye?
See you later.
Awesome. Well, you guys have a great rest of your week, and I can't wait to see you guys next week. Bye.